A private message thread surfaces online at 2 a.m. Istanbul time, containing what appears to be screenshots of intimate conversations allegedly belonging to Barış Arduç, and within minutes, the entire Turkish entertainment world erupts. The messages appear tender, familiar, deeply personal, but here is what nobody expected. The name at the top of the chat is not Elçin Sangu. Now, before you click away thinking you already know the story, I promise you, what actually happened here goes so much deeper than tabloid gossip, and by the end of this investigation, you will understand why this moment reveals something profound about fame, privacy, and the impossible position we put our favorite couples in. Stay with me because nothing about this story is what it first appeared to be. Let me take you back to understand how we arrived at this explosive moment. Barış Arduç and Elçin Sangu became Turkey's most beloved couple not through scandalous headlines, but through something far more rare in the entertainment industry. Authenticity. Or at least what millions of fans perceived as authenticity. When they starred together in Kiralık Aşk back in 2015, their chemistry was not just visible, it was the kind of magnetic connection that made viewers forget they were watching actors. Social media exploded with fan accounts dedicated to analyzing every glance, every smile, every behind-the-scenes moment between them. The hashtags trended for years. International audiences discovered them through subtitled clips. This was not just a show. It became a cultural phenomenon that transcended borders. But here is what made Barış and Elçin different from other on-screen couples who fans desperately wanted together in real life. They actually got together. When they confirmed their relationship, it felt like the universe had aligned correctly for once. Fans had manifested their dream into reality. Finally, a story with a happy ending. They were private about their relationship, never exploiting it for publicity, never staging paparazzi shots, never selling their intimacy for magazine covers. This discretion made them even more appealing. In an age of oversharing, they held something back, something sacred. People respected that boundary. Or at least they thought they did. For years, Barış and Elçin navigated their relationship under intense public scrutiny with remarkable grace. They attended events together occasionally, shared subtle moments on social media just enough to acknowledge their bond without commodifying it. Fans created entire timelines tracking their relationship through jewelry choices, matching accessories, carefully cropped Instagram posts. The speculation was constant, but mostly affectionate. Then in 2020, something shifted. The posts featuring each other became less frequent. The public appearances stopped. An unsettling silence settled over what had been a relationship fans felt personally invested in. Were they still together? Had they broken up? Neither Barış nor Elçin said a word, maintaining the same privacy they always had, but now that privacy felt agonizing to the millions watching. By late 2021, the whispers became impossible to ignore. They had broken up. No official statement came, no dramatic revelation, just a quiet dissolution that felt like a personal loss to fans who had invested years of emotional energy into believing in this love story. People mourned online. Think pieces were written about why we invest so heavily in celebrity relationships. Fan pages slowly went dormant. It hurt, but there was a dignity in how it ended. No cheating scandals, no public feuds, just two people who had grown apart. At least that is the story everyone accepted. Until those messages surfaced. Now let me be absolutely clear about something before we go further. The authenticity of these leaked messages has never been verified. Barış Arduç never confirmed they were real. The source of the leak was never definitively identified. What we are examining here is not necessarily what Barış actually wrote, but rather what happened when these alleged private conversations became public, and why the reaction was so visceral. This distinction matters tremendously because what unfolded says more about us, the audience, than it does about any celebrity. The alleged messages appeared on a gossip forum known for Turkish entertainment leaks. They showed conversations that seemed casual, affectionate, the kind of mundane intimacy that characterizes real relationships. Good morning texts. Complaints about traffic. Inside jokes that meant nothing to outsiders, but suggested deep familiarity between the participants. What made these messages detonate across social media was not their content, which was actually quite innocent, but their existence. Because if these conversations were happening, they represented a timeline that overlapped with when Barış was still publicly perceived to be with Elçin. The timestamp suggested these messages occurred during what fans considered the sacred period of the Barış and Elçin romance. But here is where this story takes a turn that nobody anticipated. Within hours of these screenshots circulating, digital forensics experts on social media, and yes, there are people who dedicate their free time to this, began identifying inconsistencies. The font rendering looked wrong for the messaging app allegedly used. The timestamp format did not match the regional settings it should have displayed. Metadata that should have been scrubbed in a real leak was conspicuously perfect. What started as a scandal began morphing into something else entirely. A possible fabrication. But the damage was already accelerating beyond anyone's control. Fan communities fractured instantly. Some defended Barış absolutely, insisting the messages were obvious fakes designed to damage his reputation. Others felt betrayed, arguing that even if the specific messages were fake, they might represent a truth people had been protecting him from. A third group began attacking Elçin, somehow blaming her for the situation despite her complete absence from the narrative. The toxicity escalated within hours. Barış's Instagram was flooded with comments ranging from supportive to vicious. Elçin, who had nothing to do with any of this, faced her own wave of harassment. And whoever was in those alleged messages, assuming they were real and assuming she existed, became the target of an internet campaign to identify and shame her. Barış remained silent for 3 days. In the age of immediate crisis management, where publicists typically demand instant responses, this silence was remarkable. Some interpreted it as guilt. Others saw it as dignity, a refusal to engage with invasion of privacy. His management released a brief statement that these messages were fake, an attempt to damage his reputation, and that legal action was being considered. But they did not elaborate, did not provide evidence of fabrication, did not name suspects. The statement somehow satisfied no one, adding fuel to every existing theory. What nobody was discussing in those chaotic first days was the darker question lurking beneath the scandal. Why do we feel entitled to know? If Barış Arduç had a private conversation with anyone, about anything, at any point in his life, what gave strangers the right to read it, analyze it, judge him for it? When did we collectively decide that fame negates the fundamental human right to privacy? These questions make us uncomfortable because they implicate us, the audience, in a system that treats celebrities as products we have purchased and therefore own. Let me take you inside the psychology of what was actually happening here, because this is where the story transcends gossip and becomes genuinely important. Parasocial relationships, the one-sided connections fans develop with public figures, create a unique form of emotional investment. When you have watched Barış Arduç on screen for hours, followed his career, celebrated his successes, you begin to feel like you know him. Your brain processes his face with the same recognition patterns it uses for actual friends. When he appeared happy with Elçin, fans experienced genuine joy. When that relationship apparently ended, they experienced genuine grief. These emotions are real, even if the relationship is imaginary. So when those messages leaked, the reaction was not really about privacy violation or potential infidelity. It was about narrative collapse. Fans had constructed an entire story about who Barış was, what his relationship with Elçin meant, how that love story fit into their own understanding of romance and possibility. Those messages, real or fake, shattered that narrative. The anger was not moral outrage. It was the rage of someone who realizes they have been emotionally invested in a story they were never entitled to in the first place. That realization is humiliating, so instead of examining their own parasocial dependency, people directed fury at Barış for disrupting the fantasy. Now I want to address what everyone has been wondering since the beginning of this video. What about Elçin? How did she respond to this chaos? Here is where the story gets genuinely moving. Elçin Sangu posted a single Instagram story during the height of the scandal. No statement about Barış, no acknowledgement of the leaked messages, nothing about their past relationship. Just a simple image of a sunset with a quote about inner peace and releasing what you cannot control. It was up for 24 hours and then disappeared, as Instagram stories do. But that moment of grace, that refusal to engage with the circus, that quiet assertion of boundaries, it was more powerful than any publicist's statement could have been. Because here is what Elçin understood that the online mob did not. Her relationship with Barış, whatever it was, whenever it existed, however it ended, belonged to them. Not to fans, not to gossip sites, not to the millions of people who felt entitled to their story. By refusing to provide ammunition for either side, by not defending Barış or condemning him, by not even acknowledging the controversy, she maintained the one thing that the modern internet tries to strip from public figures: dignity. In the weeks following the initial explosion, something interesting happened. The story began eating itself. With no new information, no response from Barış beyond that initial statement, no participation from Elçin, the scandal had nowhere to go. Gossip sites recycled the same screenshots with increasingly desperate headlines. Fan theories became so elaborate they collapsed under their own complexity. People started admitting they had maybe overreacted. Digital forensics breakdowns showing the messages were likely fabricated gained traction. The mob that had been so certain of betrayal began quietly dispersing, embarrassed by their own intensity. A smaller story emerged in the background that most people missed. A social media user came forward claiming they had created the fake messages as an experiment to see how quickly misinformation would spread in fan communities. They provided detailed documentation of how they fabricated the screenshots, which apps they used, how they manipulated fonts and timestamps. Some people believed this confession. Others thought it was a cover story, perhaps paid for by Barış's team to contain the damage. There was no way to verify the truth. And that uncertainty, that permanent ambiguity, is actually the most important part of this entire story. Because we live in an era where truth has become optional. We believe what confirms our existing biases. If you were predisposed to see Barış as a cheater, you believed the messages were real. If you were invested in defending him, you believed they were fake. The actual truth became irrelevant compared to the emotional truth people needed to maintain their worldview. This is not unique to celebrity gossip. This is the defining epistemological crisis of our time, playing out in miniature through a Turkish actor's alleged text messages. 6 months after the scandal, Barış appeared in an interview promoting a new project. The journalist, to her credit, asked directly about the leaked messages and the invasion of his privacy. Barış took a long pause before answering. He said that being a public figure means accepting a certain loss of privacy, but it does not mean accepting lies. He said that some things in life are sacred and should remain protected, that not everything needs to be explained or justified to strangers. He spoke about the importance of distinguishing between the characters he plays and the person he is. And then he said something that stayed with me. He said that the hardest part was not the false accusations about him, but watching people he cared about get hurt by association with rumors they had no part in creating. He did not name Elçin, but everyone understood. Whatever had existed between them, whatever affection or love they had shared, he was protecting it even after it ended. That kind of loyalty to someone's dignity, even after a relationship dissolves, is rare. It suggested that whatever the truth of their breakup, it was not the dramatic betrayal people wanted to believe in. Sometimes love ends quietly. Sometimes people grow apart without villains or victims. That mundane reality is less satisfying than scandal, so we resist it, but it is usually closer to the truth. Elçin never directly addressed the situation in any interview. She continued working, posting occasionally on social media, living her life with the same private grace she always had. In one interview about a completely different topic, she was asked generally about dealing with public scrutiny. She said something that struck me as quietly devastating. She said that people confuse access with intimacy. Just because they can see parts of your life does not mean they know you. Just because they have watched you on screen does not mean they own your story. She said privacy is not about having something to hide, it is about having something to protect. There is a broader context that makes this story even more significant. Turkey's entertainment industry has a unique position globally. Turkish dramas have become international phenomena, streaming in over 100 countries, creating massive fan bases from South America to the Middle East to Southeast Asia. Actors like Barış and Elçin are not just national celebrities, they are global figures with fans who span cultures and languages. This international attention amplifies everything. A local gossip story becomes a worldwide scandal within hours. The invasion of privacy is not just domestic, it is global and relentless. And here is the part that should genuinely concern us. This was not about real harm. Nobody was accused of crimes. No one was physically hurt. The alleged messages, even if real, showed nothing illegal or even particularly scandalous. They were just private. The entire explosion happened because fans felt entitled to know everything and were angry when reality did not match their fantasy. If this level of vitriol can be directed at public figures over something this inconsequential, what does that say about our capacity for empathy? What does it say about the world we are creating where privacy is treated as suspicious and boundaries are seen as betrayal? Multiple think pieces were written during this scandal about the ethics of consuming leaked private information. If someone hacks a celebrity's phone and releases intimate photos, most people now understand that looking at those photos makes you complicit in the violation. But text messages exist in a gray area. They seem less intimate than photos, more like information than privacy. But that distinction is false. A private conversation is exactly that. Private. Reading it without consent is violation, regardless of how mundane or scandalous the content might be. The legal dimensions of this case were largely ignored in the public discourse, but matter tremendously. In Turkey, as in many countries, there are laws protecting digital privacy and penalizing unauthorized access to private communications. If the messages were real and were obtained through hacking, that is a crime. If they were fabricated and distributed to damage someone's reputation, that is defamation. But prosecuting these cases is incredibly difficult. The internet is borderless. Anonymous accounts can spread information globally within minutes. By the time legal processes even begin, the damage is permanent and irreversible. Barış's legal team did apparently pursue action against several gossip sites that published the messages, but details were never made public. Some sites issued quiet retractions buried in their archives. Others simply moved on to new scandals. None of this restored Barış's privacy or undid the harassment that he, Elçin, and whoever else was implicated endured. The legal system, designed for a pre-digital era, is fundamentally inadequate for addressing the speed and scale of online privacy violations. Now, almost 2 years after this scandal erupted and faded, what can we actually conclude? The messages were most likely fabricated, though we cannot be absolutely certain. Barış and Elçin had a real relationship that ended for reasons that remain their business alone. Fans created narratives that had little to do with reality and then felt betrayed when reality refused to cooperate. The entertainment industry continues treating celebrity privacy as a commodity to be bought and sold. And we, the audience, continue consuming these stories while telling ourselves we are somehow not part of the problem. But here is what I want you to take away from this. Barış Arduç and Elçin Sangu are real people. Not characters. Not products. Not fantasies that exist for our entertainment. They have interior lives we will never access, thoughts we will never hear, struggles we will never understand. The relationship they shared was theirs, not ours. When it ended, we lost nothing because we never had it. The grief fans felt was real, but it was grief over a story they told themselves, not over something that was taken from them. The next time a scandal like this erupts, and it will because this cycle is relentless, I want you to pause before clicking. Ask yourself what you actually gain from this information. Ask yourself if satisfying your curiosity justifies violating someone's privacy. Ask yourself if the version of events you are being sold is designed to inform you or manipulate you. Ask yourself if you would want your private messages analyzed by millions of strangers, your relationships dissected by people who have never met you, your life treated as entertainment for people who claim to love you but do not actually know you. Barış and Elçin both continue their careers. They are professionals who deliver incredible performances that bring joy to millions. That should be enough. Their talent should be enough. We do not need their pain, their private moments, their text messages, their heartbreaks. We are not entitled to those things simply because they are famous. Fame is not consent for violation. Success is not an invitation for harassment. And our parasocial affection does not grant us ownership over their lives. This story matters not because of what it revealed about Barış or Elçin, but because of what it revealed about us. About how quickly we abandon empathy when curiosity beckons. About how we dehumanize people we claim to admire. About how we have normalized invasion of privacy to the point where defending boundaries is seen as suspicious. If we cannot extend basic human dignity to people whose work we claim to love, what does that say about our capacity for dignity in any context? I hope Barış has found peace beyond this chaos. I hope Elçin continues protecting her inner world with the same grace she showed during the storm. I hope whoever else was affected by this manufactured scandal, guilty of nothing more than existing in proximity to fame, has been able to rebuild their privacy. And I hope that we, the audience, can start examining our own complicity in these cycles of violation that we enable every time we click, share, comment, and consume. If this video made you think differently about celebrity privacy, about the ethics of leaked information, about the stories we tell ourselves about public figures, then share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe if you want more content that goes beyond surface gossip to examine what these stories actually mean. And leave a comment telling me how you are going to approach celebrity news differently after watching this. Because change does not happen when celebrities finally establish perfect boundaries. It happens when we, the audience, stop demanding access to things we were never entitled to in the first place. The power has always been ours. The question is whether we will finally use it responsibly.